7 conservative presidential candidates met Wednesday night in California for their second debate. The candidates squared off on key issues like Biden's economic policy, border security, and the 14th Amendment. GOP frontrunner former President Donald Trump was not there. Instead of taking part in the debate, Trump visited an auto factory in Detroit and spoke with workers there. Here with me now is ABC's political director, Klein. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with key takeaways from the second GOP presidential primary debate. Did any candidate come out to establish themselves as a close contender with former President Trump, who did not appear on that stage?
It's hard to see how anyone at Wednesday night's debate really made a difference that's going to change the dynamics where this is Trump versus everybody else. But if you think about it as just positioning to be that one person, I think Nikki Haley did herself some real favors. I think Tim Scott set himself apart quite a bit. I think Chris Christie is saying flatly that Biden or that Trump would be a disaster. I think carved out a lane for himself. But, you know, it's really a strange kind of campaign because we're operating under the assumption that Donald Trump's the runaway front runner, and it may be that he just goes wire to wire and no one has a chance against him. It's also possible that one or maybe two people on that field emerge as the viable alternatives, but clearly Trump isn't going to lose to 7 or 8 people, and that's where future debates might have some other extra winnowing.
Do you think that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis faltered on Wednesday night?
I don't know if faltered. I don't know that he shone, though, either. He was the man in the middle. He has better polling than anyone else, more supporters, at least measured that way, good fundraising. But he has to keep that going and show that he is worth the initial promise, the idea that people had channeled a lot of their expectations into him. He hasn't met it yet. I was struck by how he didn't respond to some of the attacks from people like Nikki Haley, to a lesser extent from Senator Scott. But still, he's in a strong position in that he's polling better than the others. He's got to turn it around a bit. So I don't know that it was necessarily weak, but it wasn't as strong as some of the others.
This second debate gave viewers interruptions, crosstalk, squabbles between candidates and the moderators over speaking time. Do you think a messy debate influences how viewers and voters see these candidates?
Well, it just makes it harder to break through. And I think about the urgency in this race, that so many of these candidates are trying to be the person. And any time that they were talking over each other or being chided by the moderators was time that they weren't able to do that. It's unfortunate. I feel bad for the moderators. I also understand the candidates. They have their moment in the sun. They want to be heard. They're frustrated if they're not being heard from on everything. It's hard to wrangle 7 people up there on stage. But I do think it detracted from the overall messaging. And frankly, it played into the framing that Donald Trump loves right now, which is that none of this really matters as long as Donald Trump is leading by 40 points.
Do you think after the debate we saw, will Trump even need to show up?
It's a great question. Look, his strategy has worked so far. He's only gotten stronger from not attending. I continue to believe that he will show up at some debate at some point before voting starts in Iowa and New Hampshire. But his team is again saying that his position is that he's not going to go. I think that's the political advice. It's also the legal advice from some corners to say you're not going to say anything that gets you in more trouble with any of the 4 different sets of indictments he's facing. But he's a very unpredictable person. I think it's unlikely that he's going to be able to avoid that spotlight, or that he's likely to avoid the spotlight all the way through.
You talked about the highlights some of the candidates saw Wednesday night. Can you declare a winner in this debate or no?
Look, I think you can say glibly that Donald Trump's the winner by no one else being a clear away winner. I think they had different things to do in the debate, and I think Haley, Scott, Christie, all strong in their own ways, and they have good takeaways, and they're hoping this helps them with fundraising and potentially in polling.
Turning now to the disarray we're seeing in Congress right now, why have we been seeing such a division between House Republicans?
I think they've got some real policy disagreements. There's a lot of frustration over Kevin McCarthy's leadership. We remember how long it took him to even become the speaker back in January. And I think Donald Trump's influence is part of this as well. The MAGA wing has some overlap with the people that are right now clamoring for no negotiation that allows Democrats to get anything in this. So I think they delayed a lot of this reckoning. They were able to put it off through the debt ceiling, through that speaker's vote. And now, 9 months into the year, they deal with the consequence of some of the deals that they've had to cut amongst themselves.
What does McCarthy need to do to establish a harder leadership line within his caucus right now?
You know, I don't know. I don't know how he keeps his job and also keeps the government open. That's really the problem right now, is that the options he has to keep the government open are things that might end up sacrificing his job immediately. Probably the best thing is going for him right now that no one else is a true alternative. Kevin McCarthy is the only guy that's holding these things together right now. the rebels in his own conference don't have a better choice or a viable choice to replace him with. And he's trying to let off some steam with impeachment proceedings, as well as going to the brinksmanship of spending. I'm probably doing as good a job as anyone can right now. But again, it's about how he got the job and as well as how he keeps it.
Is this division within a single party rare, or is this something that the country has seen in the past? How would you characterize it?
I think it's rare to see this kind of division, just because we're talking about a 4-vote majority inside the House and so many of the people there that disagree with the leadership. What to me is different is you have people that are coming to the table right now without truly another path. Donald Trump has talked about a lot of these people as friends and allies, and McCarthy's described them as just people that want to burn the building down sometimes. That makes it harder than previous divisions, but divisions inside a party are natural, especially in a time when you've got divided government, because there's such an emphasis on keeping everyone on one side or the other together.
Does this impact voter sentiment going into a critical election season?
Government shutdowns have never been good for Congress, for Republicans in particular, and it's not a good look all around. I also think for President Biden, people's frustration with his leadership could be exacerbated if you have an extended shutdown. It just seems chaotic. I tend to think, though, that people aren't going to make fixed political decisions for November of 2024 based on what's going on in September or October of 23.
ABC News political director Rick Klein, thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.